Zark. The amalgamation of the four multi-dimensional duelists of Yuya Sakaki, Yuto, YGO, and Yuri. The combination of Pendulum, Xyz, Synchro, and Fusion in YGOArc-V. This character is nothing more but a dueling multiversal menace. But to get a little bit more of backstory from Zark, if you've seen the YGOArc-V manga, this is how it basically happened. Now, as you know, as the original 4 series that came into existence, Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters, GX, 5Ds, and Zexal, they were all in one dimension. They were basically one whole dimension. That is until further on into the future of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Series itself, where the invention of solid dual visions created by Leo Akiba, which is Declan Akiba's father, created this new holographic but solid kind of vision-like monsters that you can actually touch them, plus also ride on them, like how Yuya Sakaki actually rides on his Odd Eyes Pendulum Dragon. Now, if you're trying to put Zark for instances, Zark himself was just, of course, once another ordinary yet talented duelist, and was basically put into the stage of dueling entertainment. Not exactly really duel-taining like Yuya Sakaki back then, but it was just regular duel tournaments and whatnot. Until one day, a certain type of incident happened. When Zark was basically winning one specific duel, and one of his monsters, or even one of the opponent's monsters of his own, actually bumped into the opponent himself that he was actually dueling, his own monster actually toppled onto him, which then kind of really provided a bit of damage. And I'm talking about real life damage, because think about it, Solid Vision can actually, as I said before, can make you actually feel the monsters that you're actually using. So it almost actually felt like there was actually an animal that actually just went on top of this person. And when the crowd saw that, the crowd wanted more of it. They wanted more brutality. They wanted more violence, which really kind of put on a very negative impact on Zark. And since that he just basically gave the people what he want, he continued doing that. And duel after duel, he just literally beat the crap out of every single duelist, literally through dueling thanks to the solid vision, causing real damage to humans. Until one day, there was nobody out there to challenge Zark, and that led to one massive problem. And if there was no one else to duel, Zark hungered for more, and what he did was the absolute unthinkable. Bringing out a monster called the Astrograph Sorcerer, which was a monster that actually be able to manipulate time and space itself, using the power to fuse the specific dragons that he had in his deck, the 4-dimensional dragons. Now, pendulum summoning did not exist back then, alright? So let's remember this, because the monsters that he fused specifically were Odd Eyes Dragon, the original Odd Eyes Dragon, before Odd Eyes Pendulum Dragon actually came to existence, along with, of course, Dark Rebellion Xyz Dragon, Clearwing Synchro Dragon, and Starving Venom Fusion Dragon. And together, this is what created Supreme King Zark. Well, the original Supreme King Zark. So technically speaking, when you think about it, if Konami were to actually make a card like this that only involves with fusing not just the first 3, which is Xyz, Synchro, and Fusion, but then just a regular effect monster like Odd Eyes Dragon himself and not the pendulum version of it, technically speaking, that would be the original Zark, technically speaking. So I guess you could say that means that if you call that a fusion, that's just basically Supreme Zark? I don't know, the original? I know that's the only best title I could probably put it, but sure. But at least that's what I'm kind of thinking of. Anyways, moving on with the rest of the backstory. So after that, he became this absolute colossal of a dragon monster himself. And literally, nothing that everyone was actually able to do could not do anything. There's nothing could work, not even a military could freaking stop him. except for one particular duelist who was able to put a stop to him. Now, this is what happened. YGOArc-V, who of course created the entirety of the solid vision of Duel Monsters himself, he decided to create 4 special cards. 4 cards that could actually immutate the specific the special summoning methods, even though technically speaking that pendulum summoning never existed yet, which is a bit interesting, so we might have to look into that part later for a second. But with these 4 cards, this was going to be the only way that could seal and stop Zark for good. However, his daughter, Ray, took those cards in order to put a stop to Zark herself. And doing that caused a crazy anomaly of effects that not just only affected the world, but the entire space-time continuum himself. By playing the 4 cards that Ray specifically used, these cards had an effect that split not just both Ray, but also Zark as well into 4 different people, and also splitting the entire Earth into 4 unique dimensions. Which in turn, YGOArc-V was somehow sent back in time, which was the standard dimension, where technically like the Kyber Corp dual disc were actually still around, but this was also the time when he then also reinvented the solid vision dual disc, and that's when he also met Yusho Sakaki, Yu Sakaki's one and only father himself, the master of dual-taning. But only a few moments and months later is that when he made a crazy discovery that her daughter was still alive, but not the way that he actually thought. But he then already put up the pieces together in that thought. That one of the duelists, like Zuzuboya for example, was only a piece, a fragment of Ray. Which, by the way, also belonged to the standard dimension as well. As for the rest of the other 3, like Rin from the single dimension, Selena from the fusion dimension, and Lulu from the Xyz dimension. The same thing for Zark's counterpart, Yu Sakaki in standard, Yuto in Xyz, Yugo in synchro, and Yuri for fusion. So he then actually decided in actually creating some sort of multi-dimensional machine that will allow him to travel through each of the 4 dimensions. And the fusion dimension was the best way to go. In time, that is basically when he then saw Duel Academy, empowering Duel Academy students in order to be able to bring up a multi-dimensional war. In order to be able to gather up all of the 4 girls in order to reunite them into one body, her one and only original daughter, Ray herself. Not only that Leo wanted to bring her back, but to also unite all the 4 dimensions back into one, just by fusing the 4 girls. But when it comes to Zark, apparently, he didn't want that to happen. He wanted to get rid of Yuya and all the other counterparts of Zark along with him. However, easy said and done, because that obviously wasn't going to be the best case scenario. During the duel against Yuya and Yuri, let's just say that things did not go well. Although that technically Yuya won, but Zark's soul was starting to apparently show, allowing to fuse into all the 4 duelists again back to his original form, but a little bit more nasty and a little bit more, well, pretty decrepit, if I feel so myself. Now, a lot of people say that some of the design of, like, kind of making it look like Yuya instead of Zark was a bit of a missed opportunity, which sure, I understand, but, you know, it still looks pretty cool. Still looks pretty terrifying, in my sense. Very demonic, human, dragon-like. Now, onto the character Zark himself. And as you know, I've already said in the story, he's pretty brutal. He's a massive menace in all of the freaking 4 dimensions. It not took only one duelist. It took them every single duelist in existence to take this guy down. He took down Astro Phoenix and Sora, gone. Took down Shay and Kite, gone. Took down Gong and Jack Atlas, damn, defeated. He took down Silvio and Crow, goodbye. He even took Leo Akaba and Declan himself, and they were still not strong enough. Until finally, one particular duelist finally made up into the ring. Riley, who actually had the soul infused of Ray and the 4 girls, to finally put a stop to Zark. This means the total of duelists that dueled Zark was 11 duelists in total just in order to beat him. 11 duelists. This is why I'm saying that Zark is an absolute menace. He has probably got to be one of the strongest, if not the most demonic duelist in all of the entire Yu-Gi-Oh series. And Riley, who had Ray's spirit inside of her, was the final duelist to take Zark out, while also trying to gain a little bit of consciousness from Yuya to finally return. Kind of helped out a little bit, but I wouldn't say that necessarily counts. Riley, aka Ray, was pretty much the only one to actually put a stop to Zark, and also sealing him away for good, which somehow also that made Riley turn into a baby, and somehow this also made Yuya Sakaki back to normal, along with, but this time at least having Yuto, Yugo, and Yuri a part of him now entirely, pretty much forever. And I guess they could pretty much swap positions whenever they like, just like how Yuya did it with Yuto a few times in the past in the anime. They've done that a little bit. They've done that a lot, mostly in the manga as well. A lot more frequently, actually. But I won't go too much in info with that. I don't know about Zuzu Boyle, though, because we have not seen Zuzu actually, switch places with, Rin, Selena, and Lulu, which is very interesting. We have not actually seen that yet. Apart from the fact that they're basically alive in Duel Links, and they're not, combined with Zuzu, that's the other thing too, but that's also a whole other thing entirely. Some people say that that part especially that makes Duel Links canon, which I guess you could say it is because, they're continuing it with Yu-Gi-Oh! Frames especially as well, but a part of that, let's just put that aside, but you get what I mean. Technically, Zark is pretty much one of the most insane duelists out there, and he's probably one of the strongest. Pretty much, I wouldn't be surprised it will be even stronger than Don 1000, if I'm being completely honest. And remember the freaking last video when I talked about Eve? If Eve were to go against, Zark? I don't know. I feel like Zark may have the upper hand here, but I guess we'll have to wait and see. If anyone's actually put that in the poll vote, let me know. Unless if you haven't made a decision yet, it's still there, so you can go ahead and do that. Now, let's go ahead into Zark's main deck and the cards that he had specifically in the anime. There are some retrained cards also, by the way, which we will go into as well. So, this is his original deck that Zark used in the anime. So, as you know, we got Astrograph Sorcerer, we got the original Odd Eyes Pendulum Dragon, and of course, Supreme King Dragon Darkworm, 2 of them actually, Supreme King Gate Infinity, Supreme King Gate Zero, and the dark version of Odd Eyes Pendulum Dragon, Supreme King Dragon Odd Eyes. With some of the extra deck monsters, he uses Starving Venom Fusion Dragon, along with Supreme King Dragon Starving Venom, Clearwing Synchro Dragon, Supreme King Dragon Clearwing, Dark Rebellion Xyz Dragon, and Supreme King Dragon Darkworm, along of course with the one and only amalgamation of all 4 of them, Supreme King Zark. Now, the cards that he also uses, like spells or trap cards, for example, he uses Supreme Presence, Supreme Disdain, Supreme Face-Off, and Supreme Rage. Along, of course, with the fact that Yuya Sakaki came in also at the last second and used Smile Universe to bring back Zark and Odd Eyes, Supreme King Odd Eyes specifically, but that was to help out Riley, aka Ray, to give her extra life points so that she can at least be able to finish off the job. Now, when it comes to retrain cards specifically with Zark. So like how most of some of these cards specifically were like basically like all dark and very evil, but some of them actually got retrained, especially for some of the other ones. Like take for like Zark for himself, for example. He actually managed to get cards himself, such as YGOArc-V Dragon, which is basically the full form of Zark, but it's a light version this time. And also it's supposed to be like, these cards specifically are kind of like more in control of like, you know, Zark's power. Like if Yuya Sakaki was supposedly meant to like, you know, take control of, you know, Zark's power instead of Zark himself, which is actually pretty cool. And then you have Supreme King Dragon Zark, the Synchro universe, which is a bit interesting. It's basically a synchro version of Zark along with Clearwing Synchro Dragon, which is a bit weird, but I mean, they decided to put it in there anyways. I mean, I thought it was going to have a different look, but I guess they didn't think about that one through, I guess. Unless they kind of retrained that again, I don't know. But what we haven't seen yet is an Xyz variant of Zark, which I really am hoping that they will actually be able to do that at some point in time. Maybe just a plain Pendulum version of that too. And like I said, the original version where he fused the main 3 dragons, but along with the original Odd Eyes Dragon, which I managed to talk about before at the beginning of the video. Other retrained cards, he does have cards such as Supreme King Gate Magician, and along with Supreme King Dragon Lightworm. There's also cards specifically like Wings of Light, Pendulum Evolution, which I'm pretty sure these are also cards that can belong to Zark as well, I'm pretty sure. And then of course you have a specific card especially that kind of resembles like the original Zark as well, Performapal Celestial Magician. You also have cards like Chronograph Sorcerer as well, which is kind of similar to Astrograph Sorcerer, and it can do the exact same ability of fusing the original 4-dimensional dragons together. You also got cards such as Soul of the Supreme King, which is basically a quick play spell that allows players to special summon Zark from the extra deck by triggering a Pendulum monster, ignoring its summoning conditions to boost the deck speed. Or Supreme King Soul, which is basically once again bringing up a Supreme King Dragon monster from the extra deck and offers protection. Now, I'm not going to go through, like, you know, the retrained, you know, full art cards, because I'm pretty sure you've seen those already. But, like, in all fairness, like, yeah, this is pretty much, like, this deck is pretty much fairly, like, to be one of the strongest deck in the entirety of all of YGOArc-V. And if anyone is saying that, you know, Zark himself is pretty much a strong duelist, well, yeah. Took freaking 10 duelists out, and then an 11th duelist to step into the ring, and boom, he finally loses. Zark alone is pretty much a massive threat, if not probably even a multiversal threat, if I have to say. Because he pretty much is. His evil and cruelty and brutality actually shows no bounds. So what do you guys think about this character? What do you think of Zark? Do you think that he's that much of a threat, pretty much? Like, not just only the Yu-Gi-Oh universe, but if anywhere else, if anyone would like to say a few things in the comments below, yeah, that'll be great. Because seriously, Zark is just that freaking blown, overpowered, you have no idea. I've been hoping to get Zark myself because I actually do have a specific deck that involves with the 4 Heavenly Dragons, which I do now actually. I do have the a Dragon's deck tin that actually involves with at least 3 dragon decks. The only thing I just need is Zark himself and any of the versions of Zark specifically. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching this video. Please like, subscribe if you haven't already. Click on the notification bell to never miss a video. And as always, stay safe, stay healthy. And as always, my name is Mad Dog, and may your days be mad and rad!